everyone, for this week I wanted to make a quick video showing you not one, but few places in Brooklyn and Queens, but they are all connected together through the sport of baseball. I do not think you can talk about the history of New York City without talking about baseball. Now, I love playing sports and I do watch them whenever I have the time. However, I'm not some sort of a hardcore fan of any team or individual sport, so there is much I do not know. But let me show you what I do know. So let's begin our journey in Brooklyn. First, let me show you the old stone house in Washington Park, Brooklyn. I think people used to even call it the Gowanus house. I remember reading it somewhere in a book. But it is a replica of an original Dutch farmhouse from 1699, which stood near this spot. The building has some materials from the original home, so that's pretty cool. Not only does this house give you an interesting insight of homes from 300 years ago, but also it played a significant historical role as well. For example, during the American Revolution, a lot of fighting took place around the house in the midst of the Battle of Long Island in 1776. The biggest battle of the Revolution in terms of the number of soldiers which participated. And I believe the Americans were able to retake this home twice from the British, if I'm not mistaken, before ultimately being defeated and pushed back. You know, there was just this one small thing that was surprising to me. As you see, I am pretty sure a lot of time and effort was spent on reconstruction of this building, even the old school fence, which is awesome. But why use modern fasteners and screws? And not nails to come as close to a replica as possible. Now, to be fair, probably nobody is going to see these things, but if you like to pay attention to details like yours truly here, I would have used nails. Even modern framing nails would not stand out as much as these. But again, I do not know the story here. Maybe this was the only way to keep the fence from falling apart or something like that. I don't know. But let's fast forward a little bit in history, because I did mention in the beginning of the video that baseball will be the theme for this video. So what does this house have anything to do with it? Well, this used to serve as a clubhouse for a baseball team eventually known as the Brooklyn Dodgers. Although I think at that time they were still called different names like Brooklyn Atlantics by many, I believe, and few other names as well. I will not go into the origins of baseball as a sport, as that is somewhat debated topic, and I'm certainly no expert on it. But the name Dodgers was probably a name that stuck, as in late 1800s, Brooklyn had lots of street trolleys. And streets were not as regulated as today, so people had to dodge them in order not to get run over. Especially trolleys running close to where the Brooklyn Dodgers were playing, so this place. Hence another name for the team, the Trolley Dodgers, and eventually the Brooklyn Dodgers. There used to be a wooden stadium nearby which the team played their first game in 1884. Then they relocated for a little while in the early 1890s, but in 1898 they moved into a new Washington Park Stadium, which was built, well, really across the street from the old one. And if we walk up those 2 streets or so, we see today the Washington Park Wall. This is it. Originally red bricks, which today you see painted over. But here's the thing. When the Dodgers left the stadium in 1912, demolition took place and a new stadium, so a third one was built yet again for a team called Tip Tops, who were short-lived, only really existing I think from 1914 until 1915. Therefore, this wall dates back to 1914 and the third stadium being built, right when the Dodgers left. But this is it. You are looking at the beginnings of the Brooklyn Dodgers as a baseball team right here. So where did the Dodgers go after this location? Here we have to make our 50-minute walk to this location in Brooklyn on the other side of Prospect Park. It was called Ebbets Field. The stadium opened in 1913 and was named for Charles Ebbets, who bought the Dodgers and built the stadium. After all, Washington Park Stadium was becoming too small and the area was a bit, so to speak, smelly. As nearby you had the Gowanus Canal and many industries and factories. So check out a video I did about the canal, the Gowanus Canal, if you are interested a little bit more in that history. And what you are looking at is where the Ebbets Field Park used to stand. It was closed in 1957 and demolished in 1960. And in its place, these huge apartment towers were built. What happened to the Dodgers? I would rather not say, but I have no choice. They moved to Los Angeles, California, where they are today. This was a tough moment for New York City, 1957, 1958, because not only did the Dodgers leave for Los Angeles, but also a second major baseball team, the Giants, moved to San Francisco, California, again where they are today, leaving New York City with the Yankees. Why all of this was happening? Well, in the late 1950s and 60s, New York City began its slow decline. Not only baseball teams leaving, but also many shipping companies left for places like Elizabeth or Newark in New Jersey. Quite honestly, there was a number of factors, but the simple truth is, New York City was just simply expensive. Traffic, limited space in warehouses, and since the 1950s, the American highway system began to connect everything together, and better, faster, cheaper travel with planes, companies did not need to stick to central ports and locations no more like New York City. Unfortunately, this is somewhat happening today as well. New York City is just becoming too expensive to live in and do business in. And once again, you can see a migration of people and businesses out of the city once again. And I just hope as a New Yorker things will turn around. Otherwise, those in political office can learn some lessons of what happened to this city about 50 years ago. History is important, kids. But Ebbets Field was iconic. It was like a glue holding Brooklyn together. And oh, did the people of Brooklyn love their baseball and Dodgers, even though they would probably be some of the harshest critics. Like Hilda Chester, who was a devoted fan. Devoted. Even this word is really an understatement. She would famously use her cowbell, and she would have a sign with her stating, "Hilda is here." You know, there was this sketch on Saturday Night Live with Christopher Walken, where he walks into a recording studio as a band is recording, and he keeps saying that he wants more cowbell. Just his personality amplifies the comedy of that sketch. If you do not know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and type in Saturday Night Live, more cowbell. Well, I always envisioned like a sketch like that with Hilda, where a player is pitching a ball or hitting it, and the game is interrupted asking Hilda for more cowbell. I think that would have been a hilarious sketch. That is, if you knew who she was, and now you do. And we cannot talk about the Brooklyn Dodgers without talking about Jackie Robinson, who started in 1947 breaking the color barrier in 20th century Major League Baseball. Someone who stood for equal rights and who, in the face of discrimination and racism, resiliently pushed forward, not only changing the game itself, but becoming an inspiration and someone to look up to beyond baseball. It is with him that Brooklyn Dodgers beat the New York Yankees in 1955 and won their first World Series championship. By the apartment buildings, there is a middle school named in his honor, and a nearby playground as well. And when you come into the apartment complex from Bedford Avenue, there is a marker that many probably miss because it's kind of hard to see, which reminds of the glorious past of this location. Today, honestly, what I found kind of ironic is a sign that says no ball playing. Can you imagine this? No ball playing on this spot, which really changed the sport as we know it. Well, in fact, there is a sign, there is a lot of things not allowed. You cannot see it from far away, only the word no, but when you come closer, you basically cannot do anything. Phew, I'm glad that recording is not one of them. So now I want to show you one more thing, and let's move to Queens, where we have Citi Field Stadium for the Mets. After the Giants and the Dodgers moved to California, in 1962, New York Mets were introduced as a new New York baseball team. And in 1964, Shea Stadium was completed for the team. In 2009, it was demolished to make more parking for the new Citi Field Stadium you see here. As you enter, you see this giant apple, which originally was in Shea Stadium, and it was introduced in 1981 behind the center field wall, and it would rise up every time a Mets player would hit a home run. So it's nice they incorporated it somehow into the new stadium. But the other reason I want to show you Citi Field is because the outside architecture is based on Ebbets Field. So in this sort of romantic way, the legacy of that stadium in Brooklyn somewhat lives on in this structure. That's kind of cool. But since I was here already, I decided to walk over to what is called Willets Point, where you see the whole area under construction. And this is how it's supposed to look like in 2027, so hopefully 3 years from now. About 2,500 new apartments and a new soccer stadium. But I wanted to walk through this a bit to show you how it looks like today. Right? You would not think I am walking in New York City right now. But this is how few of these streets look like, scrapyards and mostly car repair shops. There in the distance, you see Citi Field, and to the side, well, this. So no wonder that the city finally did something about it. It's about time, honestly. I feel like I'm doing something historical here because in the next 4 or 5 years, all of this area will change, and this is really the last time we will see this part of Queens this way. But 2 things before we end. 1, a great place for plane spotting as planes take off from the nearby LaGuardia airport. And 2, walking through these streets, you can always stumble upon something very interesting like this. Check this out, a vintage steamroller. Now, again, I'm not an expert, but to me it looks like maybe the 1930s, 1940s steamroller, and in a pretty good shape, so this is awesome. And lastly, let's take a sneak peek at Citi Field from this side of Willets Point as it's probably one of the last videos with such a vintage point before everything changes here. Like always, I hope you enjoyed this video, you learned something, it was worth your time. If yes, please subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see you next week in another great New York City location. Until then, take care everyone.